What's going on, everybody? My name is Ben, and welcome back to the bench for another episode of Ben Builds with Joe, Joe Builds with Ben. Today we are jumping in on the D520. I want to really push forward and just kind of work on the cockpit and see what I can do and get this thing rolling. I'm actually very excited to dive in on this kit. This is a Tamiya boxing, so you know it's going to be quality. Now, moving forward here, we're going to go ahead and jump into the cockpit. And what I want to go ahead and focus on today is more or less the PE parts. And I've been looking at the PE parts and comparing them to the plastic pieces. And to be honest, the plastic here in the Tamiya kit is really quite nice. They have a lot of detail already molded in, and it's actually pretty crisp detail as well. So I don't really find it all that pressing to go ahead and use every single piece of photo etch. Instead, what I'll probably do is just focus on the larger sidewall components. Now, I've also done a little bit of research regarding colors. References call out for the majority of the cockpit to be painted a dark insignia blue. That's what I have here by Mr. Color. This should hopefully match that color quite nicely. Now, for the unpainted parts, we actually have this right here, and this is a Tamiya buff color. I guess the French used kind of a very light tannish primer, so this is going to go ahead and be applied in different areas, like, for example, between the wings, or in front of the cockpit, or behind the cockpit. So any areas that are unpainted are going to go ahead and get this covering of buff. And then for the instrument panels and the consoles and all that, we're going to use Tamiya flat black. I think that's pretty much correct. Now, as I mentioned, I have been kind of trying to compare the photo etch with the plastic. And to be honest, right here on the front instrument panel, I actually like the plastic a little bit more than the photo etch. The reason being the photo etch is very flat. There's a little bit of 3D detail, but it's more or less pretty flat. The plastic part, however, has a lot of really nice raised detail that the PE part just doesn't have. So I think I'm going to go ahead and hold off using the instrument panel here in the photo etch and just stick with the plastic. Plus, that would require me to scrape off all that wonderful detail here on the front instrument panel. I don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and just see what we can do. That, of course, means I have to figure out how to go ahead and apply the gauges. Now, Tamiya does give you a decal for this, but I'm actually considering using maybe some punches, punch out each individual dial, and then go ahead and hand place those in the proper location. So maybe like a 1.5 for the larger dials, and then maybe like a 0.5 for the smaller gauges. I'm not sure if I'm going to do this, but it is a really nice option. I've done it before, and it actually could turn out quite nicely. So using these two right here, 0.5 and a 1.5, I should be able to pop out every single one of those dials and just drop them right into place. This is the decal sheet right here, and they look fine, so I might have to go ahead and just kind of play around with it. We're not there yet. We have a lot more to do before we can even get to the instrument panel. So let's go ahead and jump into our time lapse here, guys, and we're going to push forward on all the PE parts for the internal cockpit. Now I'm going to go ahead and focus on things like the chair. I'm going to forego the instrument panel itself, and then I'm going to focus on the sidewalls. And I want to go ahead and just add in the larger components, boxes, trim tab wheel, all of that good stuff. And then I'll also add some 0.3mm solder to act as some wiring for different places. So let's go ahead and dive right on in, see what we can do, guys. Fingers crossed. Let's get it going. All right, everybody, we are back, and I have to say, the photo etch actually went on pretty easily. I typically stay away from PE parts only because they tend to add a lot of frustration. They're usually very tiny, and I don't always feel that they add enough to warrant the amount of time it takes for me to install everything. So typically, I kind of shy away from it. But I thought I did buy the parts, so why not try to use them and see what we can do with them? And honestly, they add a little bit of interest, more 3D relief off that sidewall, not too complicated, went together well, but I did not include any of the levers on the side console. I just couldn't get those to get in. I actually lost 2 of them trying to do it. I just decided, forget it, you're not really going to see them anyway, so it's fine. Now in terms of the cockpit floor, that's actually going to drop right into place. Being a Tamiya kit, I don't really see any problems with this. I think the fit's going to be very nice. There's not really a cockpit floor, it's just kind of open to the bottom of the aircraft. So I'm not really sure what parts to be painted buff, but you might actually see some buff when you look down through the cockpit. I'm going to have to do some more research on that for sure. But again, that's kind of what I enjoy doing, so I think we're going to be okay with that. Now I also took the liberty of adding in some 0.3mm solder wire, so let's go ahead and get you a close-up here of the cockpit sidewalls and I'll show you what I added. Here on the left side, I just have a little bit of a twisted wire that I glued up here on the side of the cockpit. I don't know if it's really correct, but it looks cool. I like it. We also have our trim tab wheel and all of those photo etch parts. I did not add the levers on the top of this switch box right here. I kept losing them, so forget it. When you go ahead and put the 2 fuselage halves together, you are going to be able to see enough of the details, so I feel that it's justified that I can go ahead and add a little bit of extra interest here and there. Now on the right side, I went ahead and I added in some 0.3mm solder wire as, wiring. A little bit of photo etch here and there. There's not a lot on this side, but the main thing I added in were these 0.3mm wires. And what I ended up doing is I took a screen cap off of the internet of a resin insert that was designed way back when this kit was new, and I used that as a bit of reference. Now, I'm not sure exactly if it's 100% correct, but it does match up pretty well with what we have here, but overall, it looks okay. Now, on the cockpit floor itself, I added in the rudder pedals and I added in the control column, and honestly, everything went together decently. I'm not sure what else I can add to this to make it a bit more interesting. Maybe some rudder pedal straps, that might be something I might add. And then of course, the last thing is the seat, and I did end up drilling out a couple of areas here on the seat to give it a bit more depth. I'm not really sure if that center hole should be a hole or if it should be closed, but the corner parts, my references do show those being open, so I went ahead and I drilled those out with a tiny drill bit in my rotary tool and just went ahead and shaved them out with my hobby knife. Then I went ahead and added in the photo etch side supports there on the chair, which is something that you could have also added without that. You could have just stretched some sprue and used that instead, but I went ahead and used the photo etch parts. And I think the chair looks pretty nice. So overall, guys, we are done for our first episode. We went ahead and put in the photo etch parts that we're going to be using, added in those wires, and honestly, I think this is looking pretty neat. Next episode will come on back, and I think I'm going to go ahead and start painting up, the interior of the cockpit, which means doing a little bit of priming, coming in with my buff color, airbrushing the areas that need to be buff, and then coming in with my dark blue with some flat black for the instrument panels and the different gauges. But that's going to be next episode, so until then, you guys know the drill. Go out there, get yourself some bench time, have some fun, build something cool. Make sure to drop on by Joe's channel, check out his builds. Great guy, awesome builder. And we will see you back here on episode number 3 for the D520 on Ben Builds with Joe. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you soon.